Grand Prix is often known as the F1 race where the margins are at its slimmest because the street circuit allows you very little room for error, and oftentimes you can kiss a barrier and that's it, you're kissing your lap time goodbye. Well, as it turns out, the Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez found that out the hard way. In fact, the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz and the Red Bull of Sergio Perez found that out in a very hard fashion because, well, their qualifying laps were absolutely ruined at the end there. Although it's not too much of a problem for them because, as we know, Carlos Sainz will start the race in P2, Perez is in P3, but pole position goes to the man who till recently was leading the World Drivers' Championship and whose home race it is, and that is, of course, Charles Leclerc. And now Charles Leclerc, we all know, has had a bit of a problem in recent years in Monaco, never really finished a race there. He took pole position last year as well, but due to the fact that he himself crashed, his engineers faced a race against time when it came to actually repairing his car. He couldn't actually take to the starting grid. It was heartbreaking for him last time around. This time around, obviously, he'd be hoping to avoid that heartbreak, and he's made a very good start to things. Let's face facts. The best thing that he could have done was get a pole position, and that's exactly what happened for him. So obviously, a very big deal for him in that regard that he could manage to get that pole position. Very important, especially considering that Ferrari have lost some ground to Red Bull over the past few races. And in fact, Verstappen has now in fact taken the lead in the championship as well. Leclerc now will be hoping that this pole position is good enough to get him the win. Normally speaking, Monaco is not a race where you see a lot of overtaking. If you see overtaking, it usually takes place in the pits. So obviously, I think even the Spanish Grand Prix, Ferrari were a little unlucky in that regard. Leclerc especially because, well, he was leading the race, he was absolutely cruising. Then there was suddenly a failure in the car that was later on linked to the MGU-H. And of course, they'd be hoping that they can avoid something similar here today because, of course, they'd want to get that win because they put in the hard work, they put in the hard yards. They have a 1-2 finish in qualifying, which is the best thing that they could have asked for. Again, as I remember that, Monaco is one ground, which is one track which is very, very hard to overtake. So, then that is not something that is going to make things easy for the Red Bulls. And of course, it's worth noting that Max Verstappen was absolutely struggling during qualifying. He was up there in and about during free practice, but fourth place, not really good enough. And of course, there are other sub points as well. Plenty of lap times which had to be aborted there towards the end because, of course, going into port here, we had Sergio Perez crash his car, and then Carlos Sainz out of nowhere. He couldn't avoid contact, so he too crashed. With 30 seconds to go, the session was red flagged, and that means that a lot of drivers actually could not set a final lap, including a certain Lewis Hamilton. And again, Lewis Hamilton, we know, has again been struggling for pace. Him and Mercedes have been struggling for a little bit of pace in this particular weekend till this point. After a very good showing in Spain, many thought they'd be able to kick on. That hasn't necessarily happened, but what has happened is that they were beginning to find some pace. The car did not look easy to handle, and Lewis Hamilton was going decently, could have had a better lap, but had to abort it due to that red flag. So, Kunal K, let's not call Checo names. Monaco's, as I said, it's a circuit where there's very little margin for error. So oftentimes, if you are, you're even very slightly off the mark, you're just going to end up crashing. Piyush Plavan asked me an interesting question. He's asking, will there be a gearbox change for Checo? Well, if he takes a gearbox, a penalty, then he'll be taking a grid penalty, and so I don't know what will happen there. We'll get to know that later on because I think they'd have to assess the damage in the car first. Then they know whether or not they would need to change that gearbox. But of course, if they have to do that, that means Max in third. It means he could potentially be attacking the Ferraris head on. Of course, we know that Red Bull might just tell Checo to move over for Max anyway. It's also a possibility. Kunal K, I agree with you. Max did lack pace today. I don't understand why that was because normally we know for the fact that of him and Checo, he's clearly the better driver in both qualifying, especially in qualifying, because Checo's always been poor in qualifying. And today, Checo was out qualifying him consistently. So I don't know what the problem was. It'll be something that Red Bull hoped that they'd be able to work around because obviously they don't want to be taking a slow car on Monaco. They will need to be taking the impetus and taking the attack to Ferrari early on because Monaco is not an easy racetrack to overtake. Love Rami agreed with you. Yes, unfortunate for Red Bull, and I know you're a massive Red Bull fan, but yes, I agree definitely that Leclerc was very, very good. He definitely found another notch in the qualifying sessions. and he didn't look likely to be relinquishing that pole position. In fact, I would have been more surprised if he didn't take pole position in today's race. That's how magnificently he was driving. He'll of course hope that he can drive like this tomorrow in the race as well. And we know that normally speaking, it's in Monaco, you are very likely to win if you get that pole position, because as I said, overtaking is not something that happens a lot. And of course, we know that the Ferraris have a very good package, so they would definitely be hoping that they can convert this into a win, potentially a 1-2, because Sainz is also there in P2, so he would be up in the hunt. It's in fact a good weekend in that regard for Sainz as well, because he was really up there with the pace in Q2. Remember, he literally had the exact same lap time as Checo Perez, which was amazing because there was no gap. It was 0.000 difference. The only reason Perez was ahead of him at that point was because Perez set that lap first. So, of course, that was also good to see that, Sainz is up there as well, because he's been having a disastrous few weekends. In Spain, he was still okay, but again, fourth place was not where he wants to be, considering he knows, and everyone else does too, that Ferrari is potentially a title-winning car, and you would want to be staking your claim in early in the season. Kunalke, to answer your question, I would hope that he can finish his first home race, because he's had some torrid luck in Monaco. We know for a fact that, ahead of this race as well, he had taken Niki Lauda's old Ferrari, title-winning Ferrari, and he ended up crashing that car around Razgas. There was a brake failure, but of course, social media went into a bit of a meltdown over that, because Leclerc's Monaco curse was coming there, even in what was essentially an exhibition event. So obviously they would all be hoping in Ferrari that he can actually get that first win. He would definitely deserve it. Yes, Lavrami, he would be, I think Verstappen would be in line for a podium, but I think third place would be the best that he could hope for. Unless, of course, Sainz has another poor race, because as I said, Monaco, not the easiest to place, but of course there will be pit strategy as well. Normally in Monaco, the undercut is usually very strong. So you look to pit early on, get your races on the hards, and then just hope that they kind of outlast everyone else, and then just take the car home to the end. You're not going to see too many pit stops, but I think the teams that pit first or go opt for the undercut would be advantageous. AajTak cycle, yes, I think the cars will be on track. I don't think the damage was that severe, but it will be interesting to see if any of them have to take, Checo especially, whether or not he could take gearbox penalty, because they might just have to change the gearbox if there's too much damage. Remember, that's what happened with Leclerc last year as well, that he ended up, there was some damage to his gearbox. Ferrari thought that they could do without actually replacing it, not take the penalty. In the end, his car ended up not working beyond the formation lap. Sarthak, my prediction for tomorrow is pretty simple. I think Leclerc is taking this, and I think Sainz will finish behind him. So I think that we're heading for Ferrari 1-2. Me personally, you can guess who I support. I'm even wearing the t-shirt. I hope that, Lewis and George can get a few good points to the team, because I think that's the only aim that's going to be from this race. I don't think they're going to be looking for or competing for a podium in that regard. Lavrami agreed. Yes, Leclerc is indeed looking pretty much the strong contender, and I think if he keeps his nose clean, then this is his race, because normally speaking, qualifying in Monaco has often been more exciting than race days. Race days can sometimes resemble a bit of a procession. And Sarthak cycle, you're talking about rain predictions. Ooh, if rain turns up in Monaco, I mean, Jesus, man. If rain turns up, then this is a whole different race, because then you're going to see teams play around with tire strategies. Do they go with the hard wets? Do they go with the inters? I mean, we'll see tomorrow. There is apparently, there was a bit of cloud cover today. Whether or not there's rain tomorrow, I guess that's something that's only going to go, tomorrow. So let's see. I'm personally very excited. Yes, God of War, I know there's some rain predicted for tomorrow, but of course we know that the weather there can change pretty quickly. But again, let's see. If there is rain though, I mean, wow, it's going to be a very exciting race, because as we know, rain is the great leveler, the great equalizer in Formula 1. So if that happens, I think we're in for a very exciting race, probably a bit more exciting than what last year's race was, or even the 2019 race, which of course was pretty eventful in its own way, but still I think it could have been better. Again, I personally am very excited. We have a lot of stuff going on, by the way. I'm taking our time to be with you guys and discuss the F1 thing right now. But I am also going to be, joining you guys, because in a few minutes we're going to go live and we're going to talk about the Champions League. We're going to be previewing the Champions League, me and Siddhant. We even have a correspondent out there in Paris, who's there covering the final. So that's also going to be pretty cool. And of course, I'm going to be taking a leave now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little chat of ours. Thank you for joining us. Again, as always, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends who also enjoy F1, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Last but not the least, do join us in a few minutes. We're going to be discussing all things Champions League. And of course, join us later tonight because we're going to be doing a nice little watch party. We'd love to have you there. As always, I'm Shane Dice. I'll be with you guys very soon. Bye bye.